Yeah, man.
Oh my God.
We got robbed. Try to. You're not coming back.
Yes, sponsor, I follow both of them.
I have not changed.
Gavel.
I will call this diversity meeting, a committee meeting of the Lakota School Board on October 7th, 9 o'clock to order. Mr. Zink, roll call, please.
Mr. D.
Yeah.
Ms. Bodie.
Here.
Ms. Casper.
Here.
Mr. O'Connor.
Here.
Ms. Schaefer.
Here.
Mr. Card.
Here.
Ms. Aguilar.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Ms. Moore. Mr. Vogelman. Mr. Zink.
We realized just as we were sitting here that we need to add number 2, approve the agenda to the agenda.
I must have deleted that all by mistake. So
So please
We
make
can.
that addition to your agenda, and then obviously the numbers will change as you go down. So
You know how that.
approve the agenda will be number 2. Is that clear to everyone?
You know how changing the numbers confuses me.
I'll try to keep you up, Kelly. Okay. All right, with that being said, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
The agenda or the amended agenda?
I'm sorry, you're correct. So I'll take a motion to approve the amendment to the agenda. Mrs. Bodie, Mrs. Schaefer. Call the roll, please.
Ms. Bodie.
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer.
Yes.
Mr. D.
Yes.
Ms. Casper.
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Card.
Yes.
Ms. Aguilar.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Zink. Yes.
And now I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
So Connect.
Thank you.
Ms. Bodie.
Yes.
Mr. D.
Yes.
Casper.
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor.
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer.
Yes.
Mr. Card.
Yes.
Ms. Aguilar.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Zink. Yes.
All right, we'll move to number 4 on the agenda. I'm sorry, number 3 on the agenda. Approve the minutes of the March 3rd, 2022 meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review those?
Yes. Yes.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Schaefer.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Casper. Please call the roll.
Ms. Schaefer.
Yes.
Ms. Casper.
Yes.
Mr. D.
Yes.
Ms. Bodie.
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Card.
Yes.
Ms. Aguilar.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Zink. Yes.
We'll move to number 4, the events plan for the 2022-2023 school year. I assume that's you.
That's me. First of all, I want to say thank you everybody for being here. We all mentioned we hate missing the Shawnee fanfare, but I didn't know the principal and let her know.
Okay.
I would encourage anybody, if you can get to those, especially the little guys, get to it. The little
so
guys and
fun.
gals, it's a good time. High school, but the little ones are fun. And then secondly, I want to say happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Hopefully, at least through a few tweets I've sent of some information, you'll be able to learn some things. I learn as I go, continue to learn. Lucky to have some people of that culture and that ethnicity that helps me when I make a mistake to learn. So I continue to do that. I do want to say the things I've been tweeting have come from Ms. Smith. She's works at Adina. And I sent that to all the principals to be a morning announcement if they wanted to use that or they could use their own. You'd be shocked how our Hispanic kids and our Latino kids feel during this time when we read those at school. They see me in the hall when I was principal. Oh, thank you. We do, and they'll say, I got something new for you. So it's really a good thing. As far as things playing for the champions, just a little bit of the last 2 or 3 years with the champions have been sketchy because of COVID. They haven't really been able to meet. And let me go back. Ms. Moore's out today. Keep her in your thoughts. She's been doing it with the champions. She's fine. She's fine. Just keep her in your thoughts. She's been from the get-go. She's been here with the champions. Earned that trust and that respect with them. I'm kind of a Johnny come lately with it 3 years in now and learning. I did talk a lot about that. So this year, as far as things planned for the year, there's really not a whole lot planned because we've been kind of hit and miss the last 2 years. So we do have the champions retreat. They had that August 1 and 2 in Houston Woods. Every summertime, everybody couldn't be there, but we're trying to eliminate everybody for 2 days out of the classroom as much as possible. So we did it in the summer. Thought that was a better option, even though a lot of people couldn't be there. And then we do have quarterly meetings. When they first started this, and if you see we had the thing, champions, expectations, and qualifications. If you first see it, it said monthly meetings. They used to do it every 6 weeks. It's kind of stopped with COVID, but now we kind of, when I talked to Mr. Kramer and everyone else about doing it, Mr. Vogelman, we're doing it quarterly. And the reason that is because we do have trouble getting subs. It's important for them to be there. So we don't want to do it every month because it just puts the pressure on the principals. And believe me, I understand that from my previous role. But I did, we gave it to them way in advance, the dates, and the principals are working on subs. So I think they're doing a pretty good job with that. They're just trying to be considerate. And I made sure when we made the dates that they would never be on a Monday or Friday, because those are kind of days. Sometimes we had a lot of people out.
Yeah.
So I said Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, you pick from those dates and we'll go. And as the champions and Miss Moore picked the dates, I said, let me have them. And that's where we're going. So there'll be first one, September 13th, November 16th will be next, January 19th, and then March 14th. And then probably we'll have something after school's out. We'll have a little get together and I'll buy some appetizers and things just to celebrate and appreciate what they're doing. So those are the only things we really have planned. This year's goal is to focus on the champions. I think my first year, a year before I came over here, it was get information out to teachers, really to focus on the champions, because we have some new ones that have come on. Some that have been there forever had really a lot of training back when it first started, because they did it every month, and Miss Moore did some training and things of that nature. The last 2 or 3 years, we just haven't been able to. So we're trying to be considerate of people's health. We're trying to be considerate of time out of the building, because it's taking away from the kids, and then we can't get subs, and that causes a problem. So that's really what the things that are planned for this year. So any questions on that? Yes, ma'am.
So training, when you're talking about focusing on the champions, you're talking about training and getting them kind of up to speed to where some of the older
Yes.
champions are.
Yeah.
And where do you get your training and what does that look like?
We do it all. We do a lot of places. We do a lot of things on. I have people. There's a guy, Mr. Burton at Xavier, that I've talked to some. He does some of this kind of work at Xavier. Me and him talk. So we pick and we pull it from different places. Not like we have one set place we use. It comes here and there. And if you want specifics, I can get those. I don't have them with me today, but I can
If you
get
can
some.
email them to me, that'd be
Yeah.
great.
And I would say one of the specifics thinking about our last training is our wellness coordinator, Megan Cameron, and our director of special services, Lori Brown, and really looking at, again, all of the efforts of health and wellness, not only for our students, for our staff. And that was a real focus on what mental health access looks like, and different situations, both post-pandemic, though technically we're not post-pandemic, but post-pandemic, as well as continued assimilation of students that have been virtual and coming into buildings that they hadn't been to before, and our new students coming to the district. We've enlarged our enrollment by 400 to 500 students this year, and what that assimilation also looks like as people are coming back together. So that was part of our training came from our wellness coordinators here in the district.
With what do these champions have events? Do they schedule events as well?
We haven't in 3 or 4 years. There was a time where they would have do PD within the 3 years, probably PD in the building. At this point, we haven't, and we're not planning. There's none planned this year because we need to make sure these folks are comfortable. Because let's be honest, they volunteer their time. They don't get paid for this, okay? Unless we do something outside the school day. So this is something they do out of their heart because they want to make sure all kids feel included. So, there's times out of my pocket, I'll buy them a little gift or whatever, just because they'll send them a nice card with a piece of candy, whatever I can do to make them feel comfortable. And Ms. Moore as well, but there's nothing there that they're volunteering their time for this.
So if they're not doing, I'm confused. So they're volunteering their time, but they're not having events planned. So what are they doing?
Well, here's what I would say. Champions don't really initiate everything. We're there for support. So an example would be this, just the other day, I won't give any school names, but a young man, African-American kid had braids, right? And one of his braids fell out. Well, he went home and told his mom, the teacher said, throw it away. That's a no-no, okay? The teacher didn't tell him that. He was confused, but that's a no-no. And the principal said, I would have never known that. It's a different culture. So we try to learn those things. I don't know everything about your culture, this culture. I try to study and learn as much as I can and ask questions. Because when people say and do things that some people don't like, I don't think it's usually out of hatred.
Yeah.
I think it's usually out of knowledge and just ignorance of the topic. I've done it myself, whether it's LGBTQ students. I remember when I was principal of Dakota West and we had a young lady and they were transitioning and I didn't know. I never dealt with that. This has been about 8 years ago. And no, mom didn't know. Mom's a great advocate now, but she was new. And I said, we've had a meeting, all of us, the counselor, me, principal, one of the teachers, I think. And I said, I might not understand all this. It's new to me. Okay. We all were raised a certain way and thinking of things. However, I'm willing to learn. And we're going to learn together. And this student had one name I knew for 2 years and now switched names. And I looked at her and I was very honest. I said, I'm going to mess up because I've called you this for 2 years. And every time I mess up, you correct me and eventually I'm going to get it right. I think that's important that we have those conversations. We don't have to know everything and do everything, but we have to be able to learn about it and accept it, especially when it comes to our kids. It just is. I think that's important. So.
And I would say with events being scheduled, it's really driven by the building itself. A perfect example would be an event pre-pandemic that got canceled, but an ESL class at one of our elementaries, most of the students in that class were from Guatemala, and there was an amazing display down at the museum center. Our kids had never been to the museum center. We had translators lined up to be able to do that, but this is also an opportunity for them to see some of their culture highlighted, and it tied into what they were learning in their classroom, what they were learning in their regular ed classroom, so that it was a field trip, but also something that the champion, because that champion in that building was the ESL teacher, then that is something that they did, but everything tied into the curriculum that was going on in that building. Did every building do that? No, because that wasn't the culture of those buildings, and it didn't necessarily fit into the curriculum of what they were doing. So from that standpoint, then making sure that we had all of the right support so that every kid, as that docent at the museum center, they didn't have to worry about translating. We had chaperones that were there that could translate. We had chaperones that also could support students as they ask questions. So it's trying to make sure that things are also linked to the curriculum and what they're doing.
So events are building by building. We're not trying
can
to
be.
cookie cutter.
Right.
Necessarily.
Well, and that's silly to do that because Lakota East and Lakota West are two different atmospheres. Let's just be real. When I was principal, and it still is, it's just different. It's not bad. My two daughters graduated from East. I spent all my life at West. It's not bad. It's just different. So how we do things, we want to do them the right way, but they don't have to be exactly the same. And that's just if you walk in the teacher's classroom, they're going to teach the same curriculum, but how this teacher teaches and how this teacher teaches it might be a little different. Yeah. But they need to get it, and it depends on the makeup of their class. You have to try to teach to your learners, and that's hard. That's why teaching's so hard. Everybody don't learn the same. When we did a book study last year, What Happened to You by Dr. Perry and Oprah. I'm not a big reader. I'm not gonna lie to you. I read for work. I don't read for pleasure. My wife and kids read for pleasure. I listened to it, right? And then I marked it as I read the book. I learned that way better. To where somebody else might listen to it and it might drive them crazy. Just different. So I think that's important that, and if we look at, you can pull up that, I'm on insult anybody, you can pull up that on the internet about studies, how when kids feel comfortable, they can see themselves, what they're learning, or they see something that is interesting to them, they're going to learn better. So I think that's important. So our teachers have a tough job in trying to do that with all the different kids we have. They do a great job, but it's challenging. I have a daughter who teaches now. She asked me, what do you got? I got, it just is challenging.
Other questions about events?
I have questions. As a new board member, I think this is the unit that is being made last meeting that we had. We had only one meeting also. My question may be deeper than the event itself. So
I have more.
is it
on
a proper
events.
time to ask?
I have more on events.
Okay.
Okay, so your next, you have September, November, January, and March.
Yes,
Can you send me those dates
yes.
when you get a chance, please? And then, so the next champion meeting is held in September.
They already had it in September.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry,
November.
yeah, sorry,
Yes, ma'am.
in
I want to
November.
go backwards.
In November. So where is it held? I would like a list of all the participants. Also, who is in the supervisory roles? And what will they discuss? And then a copy of the agenda.
I will tell
I can
you,
email that to you.
yeah,
if you want.
discussing the agenda's not done yet, so when that's done, we can, we haven't done that yet. But what Ms. Moore will do is email the champions for agenda items. We might have some things, let's see what they want to talk about, kind of like I do with my student groups. The first one, I have stuff, but after that, I email them the week before and say, what can we talk about? What you love in the school? So what was the other part of that? I'm sorry.
Just all of the participants and then who are in supervisory roles. From what you were saying, I think I'm catching on that there are teachers that are in supervisory roles because you have to find substitutes for them.
No, they're just out in the building that day, so they have to find.
But what do they do like in the building? Are they just teachers or?
Well, I have teachers, I have aides, I have counselors.
Okay.
There might be a psychologist.
Yeah.
So a little bit of IAs,
Yeah.
a little bit of everything.
Can I get a list of those?
Yeah, now, right, I got it
Please.
right, for you.
And I would say the supervisory
Everybody want
roles
one?
are the principals, the
Because
administrators.
you took the time to color it.
Yes,
I didn't do it.
they're the supervisors.
This be-
I believe champions on there.
Because a lot of what comes on to that agenda specifically is brought by the building. And so a champion, again, every building,
Like principal or-
building leadership team. And every building has a leadership team, and that's, the champion is a piece of that, and the champion then is, a building leadership team talks about all needs, both physical and educational. So things that need to go to Chris Broussard, things like that, things that need to go to curriculum, things that need to, okay, we're having this and how do we address it?
Okay, and then what is the criteria? How are these?
Criteria is this, when this first started, well, let me go back to the beginning. Champions, the Lodi Champions came about. You guys have been here with this. I was here, but I was in the building, so I wasn't directly involved, just through secondary. There was a community conversation, and I believe they were really talking about not enough kids of color in AP classes, and then they talked about teachers not understanding cultures and saying things they shouldn't say, and those types of things. Dr. Mantilla was the superintendent there. So there was a group, what was the group called? Parents.
It was AAUL, which is African American United for Lakota. And this was actually, the community conversation was facilitated by our community conversation facilitator, Jeff Steck. And Dr. Mantilla and Dr. Angie Brown were part of that the parents really wanted to be able to have this conversation. And people from all over the community came. There were some administrators, all the board members were there, staff. A combination, probably at that time when we were doing community conversations, probably one of our best attended.
Yeah.
You know, we had
over 100 people. I would
Yeah, I
say there was a
recall,
lot of very
there.
And
Students.
yes,
Yeah. there's a big one.
and it was looking at the idea of, quite honestly, our advanced classes at the high school level. And I can really speak to what that looks like as somebody who had moved in. If a student didn't do Math Plus in 6th grade, then that didn't allow them to do algebra in junior high, which then in high school, they had to do basically, in order to get into an AP Calc class, you had to have all of the maths done, which meant for us, we moved here as my oldest one was a freshman.
So you
So no, none of that.
Yeah.
So in order to be able to get Calc, then he had to do a double block class, which means that he had to do geometry, the entire year of geometry in one semester. And then he had to do the pre-calc, and both of these are honors classes. So another whole year of math in the second semester, and then start in order to catch up.
Wow.
And so as they looked at that, a move-in student may or may not have, depending on other things in their schedule, if they, then that also eliminates some other things in that schedule to be able to get to that. And students may not go on to those AP classes. So that's where it really started. And one of the things of us changing how we do gifted now is that access starts much earlier. It's not just decided by a math class. And it looks at a variety of other subject areas, so that how we have taken that information, and this was February of 2014, how we take that information and where we are now, we have opened it up for students all across the district of all age levels, that we're not going to have that, 3 to 5 years from now from that access.
Well, and that was linked to science as well, because if you couldn't get in the advanced math, then you also weren't allowed to be in the advanced science. So we removed that barrier for people and gave them multiple on-ramps of how they could get there.
I'm going to pause us for just one moment, just so we can pretend that we're adhering to an agenda. Are there any further questions about number 4, the events planned for the school year? Or
So-
any other comments, Mr. Miller?
No, I don't have any, but thanks.
And I can add some
Or
events in there too.
Would you please put those in writing, just so the board is aware of what's going on across the district?
I think if it's okay, if we just put everything on the committee, everyone has the same stuff, that'd be good.
That'd be great.
And then I'll add that into the minutes as well. We'll do that.
Perfect. So,
Okay, is there anything further on the events for this year? Any further questions, board?
I think my question is,
So where it's
when
held.
can I expect the communication?
Next week.
Like Wednesday next week, and if I'll track it down if I don't have it.
We'll have it probably Monday.
Okay.
Today I gotta run around after this a little bit.
Isaac, was your question events related?
No.
This is different.
She asked to,
Okay.
the meetings right at the Boys and Girls Club.
Okay.
We be able to talk to them. They give us room to have those, during the day before the kids get there.
So the questions now are wide open.
Right,
Oh, it's open. Okay.
And you asked about how they were chosen.
yes, what is their criteria?
Initially, here's some expectations of qualifications. Now, these could probably be adjusted because these were made for COVID, so we don't meet monthly and all that. They were chosen, we sent email to the principals. We sent them the qualifications, or Mrs. Moore did, and her team at the time, Dr. Brown and whoever else was there on the roll on that. And we said, who do you think would be good for this? And they gave us names. And then they would go talk to them, say, we'd like you to do this, and they would say, yes, we'll do it or not. Now, since I've been involved, well, being as the time as principal, I picked some teachers, asked 4 or 5, would you like to do this? I think I'm mentioning that we, something we need or whatever the case may be, send it to Ms. Moore, Dr. Brown, and then they dealt with that. To this point now, we do the same thing. We either, right now what we get is some of these people, we see some schools have 3 or 4, some have 1. It just depends what the school. They will call, and I get email from Ms. Moore, get email saying, hey, what do we have to do to be a champion? One of the greatest things I had was a couple of my former students at West now teach for us, and they're like, call me, we want to be a champion, which made me really proud, as you can imagine. But I think now we will either call the principal for names, or we'll call, like, the champions will come to us that are champions now. Hey, Ms. Aguilar said she might want to be a champion. Okay, we'll go over and talk to her. So we find a planned period before after school, we can sit down and talk. And some people, and we have people come and go. It is what it is. One of my former students is not on, she's on it this year because last year she was getting married and had some things, going back to school to be a teacher. She's an aide, and her time was just limited. She's like, Mr. Carr, you gonna be mad about it? I said, no, you do what's best for you. But I think, I don't know if she can. I think she's back this year. She told me, I don't know if she's on the list yet, but she told me she wanted to when she called me.
So when you say they would be good for this, what's that mean?
The things we're trying to do here, they
That
feel like
meets
that's
criteria.
important. They feel like that's important.
Okay.
And I think the champions have to be somebody that's respected in the building, right? We have a,
Let's let some other people ask.
Yeah, I
questions.
mean, I have more questions.
Oh, you're
but
fine.
yeah.
But maybe we can rotate.
Yeah,
it.
sounds good.
we have people.
I know, I'm here reading every year.
No, the thing is that since we are new and allowed, I can understand why she's asking all these questions. And I think she's even asking more advanced questions than my question. Probably because maybe she has gotten more information than what I do. Like, is it my time now?
It's your time.
Yeah.
Please speak, and then I have a question.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna say this, that at least I know I'm a benefit of diversity. Sitting here is it's a great thing, and I appreciate diversity so much. That is why I have these questions that I'm asking. Because this is the business unit that least we pay least attention to since we came on board, and as it's been 10 months, that I want to know a lot. My first question is, what was the yardstick or the purpose for creating diversity, inclusion and diversity, equity and inclusion, DEI, right? Okay. Then
The answer to that, because I'm.
I was gonna say, that was-
no, I think I have so many questions. I would prefer that.
Okay, you want to ask me again?
Yeah, because I don't want us to answer it now. It might be deeper than what I need. Yeah.
When we're done, can you email me those so I can?
Yes. It's something that needed to be done properly. Let's not rush into it. Then is there a blueprint for it that created the department? Then how do we measure its success? Because we need to know, okay, what the purpose is, what are the things we need to do, and then we need to know what the measure is on knowing whether we're successful, we're going to the right direction, we're not going to the right direction. And then I also want to know how often, if there's a report for those success, how often are they written or delivered, or to whom are they delivered? Okay. Then was there a budget for that unit? Okay. Then for me as a businessman and also an investor, I always want to know what is the return on investment on anything and everything, including even groceries. When I'm buying groceries, I want to know this one, what benefit is going to give me. I analyze it all the way to the last dollar. I'm sorry. So to know the return on investment, I have to know the cost benefit for that purchase or that investment or whatever I am doing. Okay. By knowing what the cost benefit is, I now know, yes, this investment is yielding results, or maybe I need to redirect my goals, my targets. If the target is too high, I bring it back down. If it is too low, I raise it. And then I also know how often maybe I increase the timing for my reporting, or maybe it's too often, right? So I do all those adjustments. Then to help me now know, okay, this is what I'm benefiting from this investment, or should I take my investment somewhere else? So on a nutshell, I completely don't have detailed information on the formation, the reporting, how it is assessed, and how often it's assessed. If I can get that, then it will help me now ask some of the questions, because all the things you're saying right now, I'm trying to okay, how do I measure that? How do I know where that fit in or doesn't fit in? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So that's all I really want to know about the department.
Okay.
So my list are long, because if we were to answer it, we're not going to live here.
Well,
So I'm going to email that to you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you could, it'd be.
and I would say part of it, the first question you asked, it started from our parents in 2014
Okay.
with our superintendent at the time, Dr. Karen Mantia, and then a consultant that then came on board, Dr. Nancy Brown, who ended up being part of the action plan from those parents at that community conversation. And just as you get the paperwork for community conversations, I know they take the transcripts from that and those conversations. That I don't know who owns those, but I know that there would have been a transcript. And Linda, you might be able to talk better about who owns those, that you might even have them. But in 2014 specifically, I think for me, one of the things, as you go to your other question of measure, probably one of the easiest things, if you go back and look at our state report cards, and that's something, if you go back and look at that 2014 report card, and you look at our most recent report card on the State Department of Ed, there are a couple things to be able to look at. And one of those I would say is to look at the subgroups of what our enrollment looks like and then what the mobility looks like. So, and that's something that in looking at one of the questions that Darby had submitted, what that looked like. So in 2014, our mobility, our top three, American Indian, which really isn't as important as that is, that number one being so high is because we only had 18 in that subgroup. So even 2 leaving is gonna make, but Hispanic at 14.1 and our economically disadvantaged at 13.8. When you look at what we're doing now and you look at the numbers of our state report card of where we are, we have decreased those significantly. And when you look at our actual enrollment, we have almost doubled some of those subgroups as well. So in the impact of what our Office of Diversity and Inclusion, we have become an even more welcoming environment. And we have expanded the diversity in our student population and therefore expanded the opportunities for students all over our area. So I think that if you want hard data, look at our report cards. And those are important numbers simply because they're what's actually happening with our students.
Okay.
I
That
want
is,
to add something to that Julie might as well, since she was at that conversation. You know, if I had to summarize with Isaac, I think that I would say there were many voices in the room, and especially our students, that did not feel heard. And so if nothing else, it was a wake-up call of sorts too. We had families that felt disconnected, whether there were language barriers or other areas that we weren't doing as much as we could do to make them feel welcome in schools and able to participate in their child's education. But our students were also saying, I'm not sure that my voice is being heard as well. And Julie, you might want to add into that.
Yeah, and that there were limits to their ability to access the education that they wanted to access. And we heard a lot of that. And some of the, again, to your point of the just not being educated, some things that were happening that people didn't realize, either they didn't realize they were happening or didn't realize how much they were impacting our students' day-to-day lives and the distraction from allowing them to access their academic potential because they were dealing with this other breadth of challenges that
And
we
then
didn't
there were
realize.
daily educational experiences,
Exactly.
small things
Right.
in some ways that you wouldn't have even necessarily thought about. So
Well, it's the barrier
Let-
issue to learning, sorry. It's
Okay.
breaking down the barriers. I mean, we say it all the time. The most important thing we do is educating students. And if there are things that are, causing that to not happen, we have to be able to address those. And a lot of them are not learning issues. A lot of them are, just daily things like Linda said.
And there was a
which
lot of animosity.
impacts learning issues.
Yeah.
Right.
And one of the other things that came out of that conversation too was really the difference in our district.
Yeah.
What it looked like on the west side of the district versus what it looked like on the east side. And that's something over the last, 4 to 5 years, we've really focused on We Are Lakota and bringing that together. And that was something that was also brought up in that conversation was the access to things because we are a large school district too, and where things were happening.
you see, let me add something to let you understand the direction I'm going. If anybody understand what a student can feel when they're different, it's me, because I've went through that and how, even personally, I remember when I came 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago, the first job I got was a call center job, and I was making calls, collection job, call people to collect money. Just coming from Africa with my way I speak, my accent, my intonations, and all kinds of things. I know how hard it is to get through. But being somebody that is very tough, not giving up, I was always talking the department. Now, what I'm asking this is, I understand how this can help, but I believe that we are paying less attention in this unit because I don't think the community is being fed with enough information on our activities in the department. And then also, we need to also dive deeper to see the operational purpose, daily operations, what is being done on daily basis. So that when somebody now call a board member and say, okay, this department, this, what are they doing? See, we're not giving enough information to the community.
I can respond to that. There's no way I can tell you what I'm doing every day the
Yeah,
same
that's
because
why we have a department.
yesterday.
No, get it right. Sorry, before you answer.
Okay.
I'm not saying on daily basis.
Okay.
That's why in my request, I said, how often are those reports shared with the community? And how is it done? Exactly. You understand? I'm not saying every day you want
Okay,
to
yeah.
see it.
Quarterly, yearly, month, whatever. it is.
Yeah.
I think, I think everything changes daily. And so, but there are certain things we do that over a long time.
Mhm.
I also feel like the job we do is not boom, 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 boom in this department. It is, the need comes up, things happen. I get calls every day, from a principal, from a parent,
Mhm.
from a teacher asking, Mr. Carter, I need your help with this. What do you, and if I don't know,
You go
I
find
find out. A lot of stuff I know that they ask me, 'cause I've just always been around and been around lots of different people and have studied and asked a lot of questions to people that are different than me. But sometimes we don't, so you say like yesterday, I had some stuff I wanted to do, I had some reading I wanted to do and do some stuff. I was gonna get some stuff together. Well, principal calls. I need you to come over here now. I'm over there 2 hours dealing with a situation, dealt with our department, but she felt I was the best person to deal with it. So those things happen, but I understand what you're saying. So we'll see what we can do with that.
And I would also say that when you look at the real purpose of Lodi, one of the things that it says is to better be able to partner with our parents to provide that access and inclusion. And so one of the things that I've been doing is our Esl Connect. Many of our families speak a different language as their primary language. Our computer system is English. Our parents don't necessarily have that same access. Is that something that is community-based? No, but is that something, more specific to what that looks like and that direct impact? Just from the start of the school year to now, we have impacted 400 students in accessing final forms, in accessing whether they needed lunch applications or things like that. But the idea of it also is a long-term impact of these families with the schools. And the reason it's that long-term is because now they can get into our computer system. They know how to get in, they know where to go. I had a dad tell me, this is the first time I've ever seen my son's grades because he didn't know how to get into Hack. And many of our families, one of the gifts of Final Forms is that we have a technology piece on there that asks, how do you access? And then do you have that internet? And so we may have some presupposed ideas about what our internet access looks like for a variety of our families. But now we're going to have a little bit more tangible to be able to, okay, this whole community, or, it's more, this is only being done through a cell phone, what that access on Hack looks like on a cell phone. And part of Esl Connect is having all of the people in the right place to be able to support a family. When we say, what do you use to access? And they say my phone, then we help them to find it on their phone, because I have scrolled and scrolled and scrolled and scrolled where if I come up on a screen, it's right there. And then how to change a language, because it's in English and you have to go in and change the language. And so, and those directions aren't in any specific language. Now we have all of that access. And so what does that look like? That's one of the things, but that's not necessarily a community-wide, other than we might have some community partners. One of the things I did this with, we were at a Reach Out Lakota event as a community partner, knowing that these were our families and how do we best connect with them right there where they're already at. Some of them have been at school buildings based on those building administrators saying, this is the need in our building. And one of the gifts of those, we did one in a residential area. Naturally, technology doesn't always work successfully. And several of the parents were, they said, you know what, I'm going to be at this building on Friday. Come on over. But my child doesn't go to that building. That's all right. And they came. And this was a building that their children have aged out of. And the welcoming of the staff there, everything of, oh my goodness, but the comfort of that parent not having that primary language of English, coming to a building that they no longer attend, that's not a measurable I mean, that's a subjective measurement, but that's a huge success.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's something that some of those, I mean, I might be able to give some numbers, but I can't give that story as a quantitative access.
All of it can't be measured.
In essence, I want you to understand what I'm asking.
Mhm.
Not for you to explain, not that I really need detailed explanations. I'm trying to show that up when the purpose is indicated, we have reports, those kind of things, you have numbers. Right? Those, you don't go into the details, but this week or this month, depending on how often we report, this is how many we did in this category, this is how many we did in this category. See, with all that being shared, the community knows what each unit is doing, the unit is doing. Because I don't know.
Well, I think they're also saying, and what Mrs. Aguilar is saying, is that anecdotal data is necessarily a number is
No, yeah.
also something that should be shared.
To be shared, yeah.
So can I ask this to move on, because I want to make sure that all board members have a chance to ask questions or make their comments. We'll come back around to everybody once everyone's had a chance to do that within our time frame. Mrs. Schaefer, Mrs. Casper.
Go ahead.
Again, I don't have a lot of questions. I feel like since I've seen a change in the district and the comments we get and the feedback we get from some of our diverse learners, whatever that may look like, however they may fit. Again, here in your data, you show that at this point, over 39% of our district is a diverse learner in some way. And again, I would imagine some of these that just fall under a non-diverse category, they may be new to the district and still can access support. So while that data doesn't support it, I would expect that over 50% of our students are taking advantage of the services and the access that you are providing. And I think anecdotally, again, I've seen a difference and trying to remove those barriers and allowing these kids to access the full ability of their education. And that's what we want. I mean, that is the goal of our educational system, is to make sure every student's successful. And I have definitely seen a change since we focused on this work from when we had some rather tense meetings with AAUL at the beginning before we started this work. So
And if I could follow up on it, I think personally, me and my wife moved to the district in 2003. We moved here because of the diversity. We both grew up in different areas and we didn't have diversity. We want our kids to have a real world experience. My time as principal at Lakota West, when any new family come in, what do you love the best about Lakota West? I would say your kid will get a real world experience. They'll be around all kinds of people. Now, I may not be a friend with somebody from me or hang out or go do this, but they have exposure. And I know how important that is, because I can use my personal self that I didn't have that exposure growing up. I got it later, but if I had it earlier, I might have been able to do some things a little different in my life than what I've done. So I think that was just so important. I also think we talk about a little bit of data things, some things last year, I have student groups I meet with in the 7-12 building, started this week, always start in October. So we had principals give me the names and started with Ridge yesterday, or West, went to Ridge yesterday. And last year with these, from those meetings, kids brought things, what do we talk about, what they love about this place, Lakota, and their building they're in now, what needs to be improved. And they talked about some dress code stuff, things, and some things there. What allowed us to make some adjustments to things, nothing major, but they felt heard. Okay, and I had the little one little girl was really at little young man at their West freshman last year, they're West. I remember mom called saying, my daughter was excited because you listened to her. And that's what this is about, right? And we all know that we're going to do better if we feel comfortable, we felt heard, we felt a part of it. And when you don't feel that, you're not going to do as well. I don't care if it's your job, I don't care if it's school, I don't care if it's your team, your personal life. When you feel heard and welcome, you feel better. I look at Lakota, I've been here since 07, the 2-year hiatus, back to Princeton there. And I look at it, and our district looks so much different in all kinds of areas. And I've learned so much over it with special ed, which is, Miss Longworth, I talked to her, Miss Cruz, and knows a lot about that. So I need to learn about those things and make sure I'm doing it right. I think of all this, I think all I would ask people to do is take a chance and go out and learn about people. When we have all this crazy, we learn about each other. That's why I feel. And I think that our kids, most of our kids love that. It's us, old people like me, that sometimes dig our heels in.
And one
I agree.
minute question to, oh,
I was gonna say, and one other thing to follow up on that is also, as educators, the more knowledge we have a large population of students that have religious holidays that are not necessarily followed along with a holiday calendar that a district has. And when you think about, okay, well, how do we accommodate, there might be fasting and things like that. Previously, kids sat in the office in chairs while their class went off to lunch. First thing when somebody walks in and they see a kid in a chair in the office is, oh, what they do. So now these children are being looked at as maybe they did something wrong. And as that knowledge built from the champions out, it's the idea of, there are several teachers that during those times come down to my room and they did games, they did activities, they did different things with that. And also then helping educators, you know, there are times where there are some significant testing situations happening. Helping teachers to remember that this is a time of fasting for them. They might be best for testing opportunities in the morning.
Different time. Right.
And that afternoon might not be their best performance simply because of that culture and their religion
That's right.
and how they are supporting that. So it's the opportunity to learn what is in our community and how to support it. So, sorry, Julie.
Mr. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Miller.
I just wanted to jump in on this a little bit. One of the things I try to do is look at it not only from the Lakota lens, but what about when our kids leave here and what does that look like? And so DEI departments or offices exist outside of the K-12 spectrum. If you talk to the Fortune 500 companies, you talk to Vincent at our local chamber, you talk to Joe Meyer at the Greater Cincinnati Chamber, they'll tell you about the DEI offices that they have in the companies that our kids are going to be working at. So this is not unique to schools. Just at my last chamber meeting, board meeting, Dan Sutton, who's the CEO of Kemba Credit Union, just talked briefly about their DEI initiatives at Kemba. And so this is just a part of the DEI initiatives that are going on all over the place. So I just want to make sure that people understand it's not just exclusive to Lakota or to schools.
I think that's the issue, is the DEI program is taking over nationally. And there are concerns of the focus. So, and what it's trying to fix. So again, we are an educational program, and the concern is how are our grades being affected? But how are our grades before the DEI program came about, and how is it improving our children's grades? Because that's what our focus is education. And that's what our focus should be, is our children's education.
So Mrs. Bodie, Mrs. Schaefer was in the middle and still had some questions. Again,
That's
I
fine.
said, we're gonna come back around once everybody's had a chance to
Yes.
speak.
And I have more.
And I'm sure that there are lots of questions that we probably won't get to today. You are welcome to send those and get a written response. Let Mrs. Schaefer finish her thought.
it has been suggested at the microphone and by others that we are teaching children that they cannot become who they should be in their full selves and that they are oppressed. Is that what this program
Oppressed
is?
in what way? I think we're doing the opposite.
I agree, but that is, I don't know what way, but it has been suggested at the mic that we are teaching children they are oppressed and oppressors. So, and I believe that your work is trying to do the exact opposite and empowering all of these children to be their full selves. So I
All I
just
can say to
wanted
that is
to.
you're 100% right.
And I can give some perfect classroom examples of that. Through our Latino literacy program, I literally just got an email from the Spanish 4 teacher at one of our high schools. Her students were volunteers with that Latino literacy program at one of our early childhoods last spring. It was an opportunity for her Spanish 4 students to work with the littles, to continue to gain confidence in their language. It's also an opportunity when we pre-pandemic were able to do this for our ESL students, because it really is a gift to be able to be multilingual, and our students are multilingual, and our students that are taking language classes, if they don't get a chance to practice that in the real world, they forget it, they don't use it. And so the idea of what does that look like? Here is somebody that might not look like a little student speaking their language. And for some of these littles, because we had 3 and 5-year-olds in there, 2-year-olds in there. Sometimes that language is the language of comfort. And so when they are much more likely to participate in the activity, to feel safe to be in that area, as well as being able to start practicing some language too. And we have had students that have participated in preschool services that were monolingual Spanish at the time, but were already having some speech and language difficulties that we were able to address, so that by the time they hit kindergarten, they were already in a really good place to be able to move forward with their language. So that's just one of our opportunities of building our students, all of our students, into action activities to use their education.
Can I contribute quickly to what she just said? Just 1 second. And that is why, you see, if you see from what I requested, the community is not getting enough information, and that is why some of those kind of questions can come up. If my request is handled, I think it's going to create a lot more information in the community that can clear some of these things without these questions coming back all the time. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Adi. Let me let Mrs. Casper and I both probably have a couple of questions or comments. Let's make sure we can do that. We can come back around. I know we could talk for 3 hours today. Easily. Kelly?
Well, Mr. Miller stole my real world thunder. No problem. I actually have, it kind of does what I want to speak to. I have a cousin who works in the diversity department of a Fortune 100 company. And she said since they have started the DEI department, their profits have increased because people have a better understanding of each other. In a school setting, we've had many community conversations with students, and if you don't believe that students are the most brutally honest group of people that we have a community conversation with, and again, as Julie said, you've heard at the mic that we're teaching white kids that they're oppressors, and and I have seen it firsthand from our students who say we have a better understanding of each other. We have a better understanding of where people come from, because Mr. Adi, perfect example, we have a lot of different ethnicities in this country.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. And for our kids to be able to learn this now from each other and what each other's worlds are like is imperative to them being successful in the future, because it's a real world out there, no pun intended. I mean, so again, I'm hearing from our students, all of our students, white students, Black students, brown students, all of our students, how they appreciate that Lakota is trying to be inclusive of everybody. It only helps them.
And I agree. I think it's important to understand, our friends, our peers and whatnot. But the thing is, there's only so much time in a day. So are we taking away from teaching that public education when we're focusing on these things? That's just something that I'm concerned about.
We're not
So much time in a day. So we need to make sure that we're focusing on education and not taking away from the basic education that we should be providing. And I also think that through the real world is how you develop, that's how you understand people. And you get to know other cultures and whatnot. And I've learned from the time, that I was little, understanding different cultures as you grow. But again, there's only so much time in a day. So I just want to ensure that we are continuing to teach the education services that we provide and not taking away from that by trying to.
That's not fair.
I don't believe we are, but go ahead.
Mrs. Casper, do you have anything else?
No, I'm good, thanks. Because there's only like 7 minutes, so you should be able to speak.
I'll talk really fast. Thank you. Appreciate that. I appreciate everyone's thoughts here. We've had many frank conversations about this, Mr. Card, which
For a
I
lot of years
appreciate.
before I was in this role.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we've been
Some might have
talking-
been in my building.
You might have been, absolutely. Actually, the book might have been.
Yes, ma'am.
So when we talked at the workshop for, it was January of 2021. And I think you heard many of the same questions and comments that you're hearing today. I especially want to take Mr. Adie's point of telling the story. But I think we do need to be telling it, and I've said this before, our core competency is about education
Yes.
for all students. And when we look at these kind of issues, and Mrs. Aguilar has pointed some of these out very nicely today, when we look at barriers to education. And I feel like that story gets lost. What is the impact to those barriers on those children receiving education? Closing the gap on our report card. But that's an area that we need to work on. And I think this is one of those pieces that people don't understand, that connection. So I think our department here could do maybe a better job of clearly spelling those pieces out about why do those barriers matter? What impact do they have on specific students or specific groups of students? And how are we addressing those? And we did talk about rubrics back in January of 2021. I'd like to see us have some more specific data on that as well. And anecdotal also works for me. And I think, again, you've spelled many of those things out today. So I would like to see us be a little more focused on that. And I have one specific question that I asked you a while ago. And we had a frank conversation about, we had narrowed our focus down to two very, very specific subgroups. And you agreed with me.
Yeah.
Have we made improvement in that area?
Oh, yeah, I think at that time, you know what I said, I think the world was on this, was it summer 2020, 2021 was on this. It's never been that, but the conversation was on that.
What are
Right.
the subgroups?
Black and white. So that's what we thought, that was the big thing.
And there was no other conversation.
Yeah, because that's where the world was, unfortunately, for various reasons, and I won't get into all that right now. Because just cause, I think this has always been about our special ed kids. It's always been about our LGBTQ kids. It's always been about our lower economic kids having access to things. That's what it's about. It's about Hispanic, it's about Blacks, but it's about all of those things. This has never been about race. The conversation gets stolen by people.
Right.
Thank you.
But it's never been about that. And if you followed me ever in my career, it's never been about just that. Do I think because of my race, do I understand some of that? Yeah, because I've dealt with stuff. But I said, go home and my wife's white and my kids are mixed and we deal with all these things and we have these conversations. I have, you know, the LGBTQ, transgender. Dakota West was I had 5 transgender kids move because the people told them, Mr. Carter, they scared him. No, Mr. Carter treats everybody like he's supposed to be treated. I didn't treat them special. I treat them like everybody.
That's right.
I listened. I cared. They come off and cry. I didn't understand sometimes. You know, I just didn't understand, but I listened. Right? I work with Miss Dewar, our special ed department, all the time on things. Some of you may know in my, you know, I'm the senior director of diversity, outreach, diversity, inclusion, but I'm also the ombudsman for the district. And I'm gonna be honest with you, that's taking up more of my time than this is right now. I'll be 100% honest with you. Calls come. I got 2 calls down this morning. I got to call some parents back. I got to go to visit a parent. I got to visit a kid in a building. So all those things, I don't look at them and say, black kid or white kid. No, or is he LGBTQ, or is he special? You need a kid needs help, or you need to talk about kid, I'm gonna help the kid. My overreaching focus is this, and what I don't have any what I don't have any patience for, I'm gonna spell it out. It's people in education that don't love kids. And we have that.
Of course, yeah.
If you're not about the kids, you need to go somewhere. And I've told teachers that, I've told adults that, I've told the kids, everybody.
And it's not lately.
Even on the board as well.
So you better understand, I want to focus on our babies. And I'm gonna help our principals, and I'm gonna help our teachers and all this other mess.
Yeah.
Y'all can deal with that.
Yeah.
That's how I got in this school.
Thank you.
Well, Elgin, I like hearing that and thank you for that. And I agree. I think all principals and all the teachers should be able to. So when there are certain classes that just say, or certain people that are known to be welcoming, that is an issue. It should be, everyone should be known to be welcoming.
I agree.
And that is something that,
But, I'm sorry.
and that is something that should be, but at the same time, we are here to focus on education. And that should be the main focus.
And
And
it is.
within that, there are issues that we have to deal with, but
And it
There's
is.
just concern that this could be potentially taking away from our children's education and not focusing on specifically because we have the report card that needs to improve.
Education is not about ABCs and 1, 2, 3. 4.
Right.
Yes, it's more than that.
It's about understanding kids where they're at, who they are, and learning about them.
So that we
That's
can-
called, that's why people in education are about those relationships,
Yes, yes.
right?
Mhm.
That's why 30-year-olds call me for advice that I had at Princeton or here, because
That's right.
they know I cared about them. They know it's about relationships. It's not, they learned, they got good grades too. The grades were great,
Well, that's the most important
but
thing.
let's be real. A couple
Sure.
of things are important. They need to know they're cared about and loved, just like everybody, but especially in our buildings. They will always get that from me, and I can't control anybody else in here. They will get that from me.
Can I go over my bullet points just to
No.
make sure?
No, I'm going to finish, and then we're going to give our administrators a chance to speak, and I'm sorry to be rude. I know we should have allowed more time, and we'll have another meeting again soon. But I'd like everybody to have a chance. Let me just finish my portion by saying, I want our focus to always talk about barriers to education.
Yes.
That's really, really important that we have that
Yep.
conversation. I think it gives a different understanding. And Elgin, one of those, what you just said. The tag on to that is student engagement with one trusted adult within their building as a direct impact on academic achievement. Those are the things we should be talking about because those are the whys.
And I think
Does that
we
make
do,
sense?
I think we do, maybe they just don't get it out, but outside, we talk about it.
You know, I think.
Maybe
that's
it's
it.
not widespread, maybe we need to do
We
better.
almost make it as an assumption that we all know that. We don't communicate that.
Communication.
I might.
Yeah,
That's what doing that,
Okay,
100%.
all right. I'm trying to get us out on time. Mr. Miller, anything else?
No, thank you.
Mr. Z, Mr. Zink, Mr. Z. I'll just rename.
I was.
It's only 4 letters.
I've been called worse.
Not today.
Today, unfortunately, I was asked to pull together some cost of the program. One of the things that I'd like to add is in the permanent appropriations, we had $272,112,081.64 appropriated. But this would make up about 87 thousandths of a percent. So it is a low amount, but it is real dollars. That is the real dollars. And I would like to
There are
add,
no supplements.
what's that?
There are no supplements going out.
No, that is correct. There are not. And I would like to add that that number is not to exceed that because part of that, there is some material supply budget that they can use to purchase some items. So they might not spend all of it.
Right.
Can you send me a breakdown of the purchase services
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
my line? Thank you.
Now, and keep in mind included in that is that budgeted. So it wouldn't exceed that, but I can give you the actuals. as
Yes,
they-
that'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
Can I pull back? You come back my way.
That sounds like cheating. Go ahead.
One of my superintendent heroes, colleagues or whatever, talks about in their district, 3 things for kids. And it sounds like what I think all of us are saying in one way or another, that we will know every kid by name, strength, and need. So while we talk about having 17,500 kids, there are people in those classrooms and those buildings and in this district that know every student by name, their kids by name, strength, and need.
Yep.
And I love that kind of focus.
Yep, that's good.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. So I apologize. We're a little late getting out. Anything further? I'm penalizing you. already.
Let's plan on having another meeting since we weren't able to get everything done. Let's go ahead and have it next meeting. or next-
So if there may be other issues, we'll have to take a look at it.
Yeah.
but We will certainly have another meeting. Board, anything else?
We definitely have more. I would like to confirm all the questions that were answered to ensure I got them correctly. All the
This is-
questions that I
Thank you.
have.
Email.
Please
Yeah.
please email all of your questions and I would ask that you respond in
Yeah.
a reasonable time.
I'll have it to you by sometime next week. Is that okay?
And maybe respond to all of us.
Yes.
I will, all right.
I put my summary also in email.
Any information sent out, let's send it to the entire committee so we all stay on the same page. Is there anything else? All right, I'll take the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Oh.
I'll take Mrs. Casper, Mr. D,
I want to go back.
Mr. C.
I gotta go.
Myself.
Ms. Casper.
Job that pays me.
Ms. Casper.
Hmm?
Ms. Casper.
Yeah.
Ms. Grady.
Yes.
Ms. Bodie.
guess. No, yes.
I guess.
You covered all three on that one. I guess no, yes. Miss O'Connor. Miss Shaker.
Yes.
I was just going alphabetical. Okay.
That's okay. And I'm a
Miss
yes.
O'Connor.
I'm a yes as well.
Mr. Carter.
Yes.
Miss Aguilar.
Yes.
Yes, that wasn't an alphabetical order. Mr. Miller.
Yes.
And Mr. Zink, yes. At 10:07 a.m.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. So have a great night.
Thank you, God.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, lady.
Here's the extra one. Thank you for
Yep.
that.
Thank you. Oh, the shoes land.
Well,
You're wild.
My kids always said, in class always said, oh, Mrs. Day has one of her highlighter shoes.
I like your highlighter. I love my highlighter shoes.
Oh.
It's like I'm never gonna. That role. How did you do? And you did good.
You're my literate. Katie substitutes too. Hi, ladies.
Hello.
How are you this morning?
Appreciate it. And I-
Hey, you too. Thank you.
Thanks.
I think.
I think